Gymnastics used to be very different than it is today in terms of health and safety, in terms of the skills that people were performing. This week, I've got an ex-gymnast who was competing in the late 80s and early 90s. He's also now a gymnastics club owner and was both a contestant on Gladiators and an ex-competitive skydiver. We'll talk about his journey through and out of the sport and how he thinks gymnastics has changed over the years. Today, we've got Roddy Mackay. I hope you enjoy. So, how did you first get into gymnastics?
So I was one of those children. At age 4, I was at my infant school, and they realized that I was pretty hyperactive. They couldn't keep me on the ground. I was climbing on things. They found me on the school roof a couple of times, and I was just a bit of a health and safety risk. The head teacher at the time then said, "Look, we need to do something with him. Let's get him into gymnastics." She sent me to a school just down the road. Age 4 was a senior school, so I was tiny. At the time, there was a chap called Gordon Foster, who sadly now has passed away. He took me under his wing and then progressed my gymnastics, and he left, moved up to Scotland and became the national coach for Scotland for gymnastics. An amazing job up there, and I used to, over my career, went and trained up there, trained up with, Stevie Frew. So I trained with him, and on their national sort of Scottish training camps, I used to join there. It was great fun. And then a guy who took over from Gordon Foster, Paul Ponton. He continued with the gymnastics program. I sort of developed from there within the school, then moved on to clubs, regional, national, and that side of things. So yeah, and it was a journey, I was artistic gymnast, and back in the day, it's very different to what it is now. You're all, focused on the child. It was focused on the results and making it all happen. And, however it happened, it happened. it was tough. And it was a great time. It really made you tough. It made you only got results if you worked. The sort of the safeguarding side of things, there wasn't really much of that then. You got on with it. You were stretched, you were conditioned. I remember being at a training camp at Illushore, and I was only young. And John Atkinson, who is, do you know John Atkinson?
And I know who he is.
Yeah, he's passed away now, but he was the sort of the what you guys are experiencing in gymnastics now. He put the foundations in 30 years ago, and he was a Geordie. He was from Newcastle. He moved down to Lilleshall and became a national coach for England, and he set up the National Development Plan, which I think is still called that. The NDP program, is that still in place? It was like a grades program. It was strength conditioning in there, and it was developed all the way through. Traveled the world and to Russia, Romania, all Eastern Bloc countries. And he could speak Russian, he could speak Romanian. Amazing guy. And he said to me all those years ago, he said, I can remember it like it was yesterday, in his Geordie accent, he said, "Roddy, son, what I've started now, you won't see the results for 25 years. And, that was investment on his behalf. And I have to say, he was absolutely bang on. Results started to come through 25 years later, and we became an international power in gymnastics. For that, we weren't. We were way off. In this program that he developed worked, but it was a 25-year investment. And all the credit for what's happened in British gymnastics goes back to him. I'm much older than you, but it's you guys probably don't know this. You owe it all to him.
I've heard about him before. Heard Barry Colley talking about him. He's the current head national coach for men's artistic. So yeah, I've heard about what he's done. Obviously, I didn't know him. I haven't interacted with the guy or really seen how the foundations that he put in led to what we've got. Obviously, I can appreciate what we've got now.
Yeah, going back to the safeguarding side, he said to me, "Roddy, I've got a meeting." And I was little and I wasn't very flexible. And he said, "Come over here. I just want to do something, talk to you as I'm doing this meeting." And he said, "Do a straddle fold." And he sat on me for 25 minutes while he had this meeting. And I could not move afterwards, but I could do a straddle fold. So that was how it worked in my day.
Yeah. Yeah, times have changed. Times have changed. No, you certainly couldn't get away with that now.
Not a chance.
And well, I'll get into some of the changes that have happened from then till now in a bit. But what was your gymnastics journey like?
It was interesting because when I joined sort of the regional squad up here, the Centre of Excellence up here, I was quite a bit older. I was sort of, I think, around 12, 13. And the guy that ran the program was Lloyd Reedhead. Have you heard of him? Again, way before you. A really good coach alongside John Atkinson. He went on to be director of coaching development. So basically, he put in place the development program for coaches, which you guys all are using now. And so he really knew what he was doing in terms of preparation, strength conditioning, flexibility. I hadn't done a huge amount of that. So I felt I was slightly behind all the way through. And I got good a bit like Joey, when I got older. So around 17 to 20 was when I became naturally stronger. I was able to do cross on rings, all the release and catch skills, not like you guys do now, but things like gingers and all that kind of stuff. That was a thing then. And I finished at 2021. And when I look back, I should have done another 5 years because physically I developed later. My training partner at the time, Stuart White, he was a man when he was 13. I mean, he was a proper unit. Yes. I've got photos of me stood next to him. I look like a little kid. He looks like he's in his 20s. But he did really well, but he was physically more developed. And that's sort of what kind of held me back until I got to those late teenage years. But I'd say to a lot of gymnasts, and probably including yourself, it's not about being a superstar when you're little. I think that's a bit of it's a tricky thing to keep that going all the way through, keep that level of training from day one all the way through. I think that the ones that are successful are the ones that steadily do well. They're they're always in the national finals. They're always in the top 15, work their way along, and eventually they get there. They avoid, because they're not doing a massive intensity, they're avoiding injuries and the sort of psychological impact of it, and just keep chugging along and eventually you'll get there. I think that's probably the answer, rather than being a superstar when you're 10.
So what were some of your highlights as a gymnast?
Like what Joey said, it was the journey. It was the training camps. We see representing Great Britain was a big deal. But actually, the things that stick in my mind are more the training camps, the actual training. My training partner Stuart, we are so close and still are now. I'm 58 or something, and he's a year older than me, and we're still close friends. And what we went through, going through our teenage years, growing up, girlfriends, we shared all of that, and it's the journey that's amazing, and the skills you pick up on the way with the journey. The discipline, routine, focusing on the job in hand. All those things are what you gain from it, really. Not so much winning the medals, to be fair.
So how would you say that gymnastics has changed since you've retired?
What, 40 years ago? I think it has become more child-centered, which I think is great. One of the many jobs that I do, I teach at a school in Newcastle here, and I run the gymnastics program. And I think we operate at school level, so British Schools Championships, we win all of those. We're probably the most successful school in the country on a school level. And my philosophy, and I think more so now, is the kids have got to enjoy it. It's got to be fun. It's got to be safe and challenging as well. But, the regimental side of things that I went through just doesn't have a place these days. That's the big difference. And I think, the coaches that are working today, they're very much sort of child-centered. And I there was a few years back, I popped into Lilleshall. I went up to the balcony and watched for 25 minutes. Nobody knew I was there. And I watched this young coach, remember who he was, with a group of gymnasts. And the calm, the way they were talking to the gymnasts was just nice. It was friendly and inclusive, and just everything they were doing it seemed like they were enjoying themselves, doing some good skills. But the bond and the relationship between the coach and gymnast was excellent, and it's very much different to what it was back then. You did as you were told, when you were told, and how you were told to do it.
And in terms of technically, and in terms of the level, how do you think that's changed over the years?
I think obviously things have moved along in relation to facilities that are available, the equipment that's available, the floors that are available. I think obviously that's gone up and up and up. And along with that has the level of skills. But there's still, everything I see today is still built on the same foundations that we had, basic techniques for your round off flick, all the same sort of thing. But you can jump higher now because you've got a lot springier floor. Back in my day, we literally started with mats on the floor. Sprung floor was a novelty. And then, we built all of our own kits. So a tumble track, we built it. Well, the guys, the coaches built it. Everything, like that was handmade. So, but what you see now is just a progression from what we were doing. I think men's artistic floor is no longer artistic. It's 5 or 6 tumble runs. I think if you take some time and you look back to the 90s floors, 80s floors from the Russian guys. They were beautiful. Some of the linking skills, the artistic side of things was lovely. And I think it added to the performance. I think maybe that'll come back around again. Just tumble pass after tumble pass. It's a thing. It looks great, but I don't think it's, as pleasing on the eye as it used to be. All the various different linking skills they did, the dance skills that were involved. Yeah, basically the artistry was lovely.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not artistic really anymore. It's become more just acrobatic tumbles.
Yeah. And I think it'll come back.
Yeah. Have you seen the thing about the single leg balance / linking skill that they've added in 2025? So the start of the code change, 25 to 28 cycle, they added in a rule that you had to do a single leg balance in the routine. And within a year, they got rid of that. But they changed it to you can do one of a certain number of skills, whether it be full twist to prone or flick to front support, things like that. So they're adding in more elements that are not acrobatic based, but it's still by and large just tumble. Because I don't know how what the gymnastics community would find would be a good decision in that direction, because the backlash from the single leg balance was not great.
Nobody could do it.
Well, no one wanted to. It just looked a bit off in a floor routine, and because that was the only thing that you needed to do, like a wide arm handstand or like a triple Russian, which fits into the floor routine. It like someone doing triple double straight or something like that, or like triple back, and then doing a Y scale or an arabesque in a corner. It just didn't look right. So they've changed it to more sort of semi-acrobatic, non-acrobatic elements almost. So they're sort of moving it in that direction, but I don't know if they'll continue to move it in that direction.
So when we finish this, you can do some homework for me. Go and watch a floor routine by, and this is a British guy, and he was way beyond his time. He's part of the program that Atkinson set up. He's the same age as me. Neil Thomas, have you come across him yet?
I've heard his name a lot, obviously, because he's one of the biggest gymnasts in British gymnastics. I will do my best.
He's the most lovely guy. Anyway, watch his floor routine. It's in the same era as the likes of Bill Serchev, and that it's sort of late 80s, 90s. And he wins, I think it's the World Championships, he gets a medal on floor. And I watched it, the other day I watched it because it came up on social media. And if you watch that routine, you'll see what artistic gymnastics looks like versus what we've got today. Just the sort of the dance elements and how it all works. I mean, he did his opening tumble, I think, was double straight, fulling back out, double twist. Those are the tumbling skills that he was doing there. And that, bearing in mind, that's not on the kind of floor you guys are using now. But have a look at that and you'll see how it all fits together. But you're right, just to stick a single leg balance in when you're doing tumble, it doesn't work. It doesn't look right. But you'll do your homework. There you go.
So in a similar sort of vein to that, is there anything else, I guess, you would change about the sport as it is today?
Personally, that's an interesting question. What would I do? I think they need to look at the amount of hours the kids are having to do in the gym, because I think that, this sort of 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, is that right for most kids? And I think that you're on a pathway, you're on a journey, and is it the right thing for children with their education, etc.? Is there a quicker route to achieving the end result without having to put the hours in? So is there, when you're in the gym, and if you're in the gym for 4 hours, how much time are you actually spent of those 4 hours training? So how much time is hands-on on the equipment? How much time is actually doing conditioning, flexibility? If you looked at that from a time and motion study perspective, you're probably down to half an hour, 45 minutes. And I think training programs, I think there could be a way of looking at it where you're not having to put that time in. You're just doing more focused time in the gym, using that time more effectively. So I think that's where we need to look at it. One of the reasons why I got my son involved with team gym was obviously I'd been through the artistic program, 3 hours a night, traveling an hour to venue, an hour back again. So that was my life. And there wasn't really much else going on. Education was, it was there, but it wasn't, I wasn't that good at it back then. So it wasn't a priority. And I think, there's a lot of people now, well, there's a handful of people that are successful now and they make a career out of after. There's a lot of people, a lot of gymnasts, male, female, get to 15, 16. They've given their whole life to it. And they can't, they suddenly decide they've had enough, or priorities change, or whatever. And yes, they've gained all the things I talked about earlier, but could they've continued along a route with less hours? And going back to what I was saying before, I got my son involved in team gym because it doesn't require that level of intensity of hours. Eddie was training maybe 4 times a week at the most, 2 or 3 hours a session, but that was enough to get to a level. And I was watching what they did, and I was thinking, strength and conditioning could be improved, etc., etc. But could you apply that to artistic gymnastics? And I think you could. I think when you look at the contact time of actually hands on the apparatus, physically doing a skill or an activity or conditioning or flexibility, I think that could be narrowed right down into a much smaller session and take up less time, allowing them to do other things in their lives, because the world is a very different place to what it was when I was a gymnast.
Yeah, I see what you mean by that. I spoke to an NCAA gymnast. I think I can't remember who it was. It was someone over in America, and said that within their training, they're only allowed to train for a certain amount per week. So the time that they do spend in the gym, they're a lot more efficient with it because they have to get a certain amount done in a certain amount of time.
Yep.
So in theory, it could be beneficial to reduce the amount of time, not just because you're reducing the risk of injury and things like that, because reducing the load on the body, but also because you're actually being more time efficient.
Everything's time valued now.
Yeah, you're not wrong. A bit more on you. What happened after your gymnastics? Because you said it was quite a journey. So I want to get the full picture. I don't want to make it too specific of a question.
Okay, so did the gymnastics, loved it, came to an end, was a little bit lost. And I was doing some coaching for the school I was talking about, Royal Grammar School in Jesmond, and I was at a competition, and a coach came up to me and said, "Roddy, I've heard you've retired." I don't know how he knew that, because it was only a sort of week or so between it. I'm going to try and remember the guy's name, because I've never actually said thank you to him. He said, "There's a job going down at Port Regis School in Dorset. I think you'd be great for it. You should apply." I didn't know anything about Port Regis, whatever. So anyway, I got in touch, applied, went down, got the job. And what it was Port Regis is or it still is, a little private prep school in Dorset. And they randomly had a focus on gymnastics, which led on to building a purpose-built facility in the school grounds with a swimming pool on the side. So pitted gym, the whole thing. And that was actually paid for by one parent. They donate their money because their kids were gymnasts. Yeah. And we had a Chinese coach came across from China, a guy called Bao, who was he was the national coach of coaches in China, and he'd been a gymnast himself. Amazing guy. And he sort of mentored me in my coaching. I went in as, back then it was level 5 up to level 1, which was high performance, I think. I went as level 5 coach. He helped me through the coaching awards, taught me, his spotting skills were amazing. And he taught me all of. So yeah, so that was then. Stayed at Port Regis, developed the teams, did well with school gymnastics, and had kids in the national squad at that time as well. And so I did that. I then left there after about 6 years, and Port Regis opened up my eyes to what else is going on around the world of gymnastics and sport, and how you can make a business out of it, how you can make money from it. And it really sort of opened my eyes to that. So I left there. I came back up to Newcastle and set up gymnastics program. I set up a sports camp business, health and fitness business. And some of that is still running today. But I also knew, and the competitive side of things hadn't left me. So I wanted to do something else. And this is what I was saying to Joey. He's got something else coming, but he doesn't know what it is yet. Gladiators came on the TV for the first series, and I said, that's it. I want to do that. So I trained for that. As soon as it was on TV, I started training, applied, got on the show, went through the same process that Joey went through. So we did all the fitness testing, and I remember coming out the fitness test, and Newcastle, I think, was the last one on the circuit because we traveled around doing it. And the guy said, "Oh, it was really good. You needed a screen test. The screen test was brilliant." And he said, "You realize you got the second highest time in the country for doing," because they had like the small assault course and with a rope climbers. I said, "Oh no," I said, "I didn't even know I was being timed." I said, "I'd gone faster." So, but gymnasts were, I always describe a gymnast as a normal human being, but just way stronger. What we can do, not so much now, I'm old now, but what you can do with physically is unreal compared to the average Joe. And I think, all the years of training, it never really leaves you. So I did that. And then after that, then rang me the following year and said, I remember the phone call when he asked about sort of pivotal moments. This was one. He said, do you want to represent Great Britain in Australia? We need, there's three of you going out. We're probably going to take you as reserve. So I did that, went to Australia. We were there for 3 weeks, toured around Australia, did the shows and did all the sort of touristy stuff. That was great. Then on the way back, I sat next to Nigel Lithgow on the plane. And Nigel Lithgow, he's again old, but he was the director of entertainment at London Weekend Television. And he said, Roddy, we've had an amazing time with you. You've got to work with us. You're not leaving us when we get off this plane, staying on. So I then stayed on for another 6 or 7 years, training, selecting the contestants and the gladiators for the shows. And we toured around the country doing that. And then on the show days, I did all the on-set training, all the stunt work, anything that involved developing a new game. So if they were building a new game, I'd be sent down to a film studio in London or in a car park somewhere, and they say, Roddy, can you go and play that game? Show us how to do it. But again, gymnasts, they can do amazing things. So I went down, would help develop the games, do all the stunt work. So health and safety. It was a health and safety company there, and they sort of put me second in charge to make sure that everything was done correctly and the training was as safe as possible. I remember being on a crane in a car park in London. And Ken Warwick, who was one of the directors, he said, "Well, you just go up there, this bungee rope, clip that on and jump off." And I looked up and there was this big steel girder above my head. I said, "No, you can't do this." Anyway, it was just funny. Back then, everything health and safety just was a different era. So I did that, worked for them. And then whilst doing that, I got phone calls from different television companies for different, there was shows like Fort Boyard, various other ones. And they said to me, will you come along, select the contestants and do the training for it. So that was that. And then I wanted another challenge about 4 or 5 years later. And then talking about what I was talking at the very beginning, skydiving had never left me. It was always something I wanted to do. So I started that, invested a bit of money in that, competed in it, became British freestyle skydive champion, which is basically gymnastics in the sky. You dive out of an aircraft, you somersault, you're being filmed. So you've got another guy flying with you. You're doing all your skills and he's filming as you're going down, and then it's judged from a camera. So I did that for another 10 years, loved it, cost a fortune. And then we got to a stage where I was to go to the World Championships. I think that was in America. And I said I wanted funding from the British Parachute Association, and they wouldn't fund it. I mean, it was a £10,000 probably investment in training and then competing. And they wouldn't put any funding in at all. And they said, if you win a medal, we'll give you your money back. And I just thought, no, I haven't got this. I've been a sportsman all my life. They're not invested. So I stopped. I just thought, well, I know I'm going into a different level of training. I'm going back to the gymnastics scenario where we've got to be doing X amount of sessions, X amount of hours. So, on a weekend, you'd be doing maybe 10 to 12 jumps a time. You and a cameraman, that was at the time was probably about 50 quid a jump between the two of you. So it was going to be expensive. And I would have done it. But, I think I was probably ranked about, at the time, I was probably 10th in the world with the skill level I was at, but I knew with the investment of the time and the money, I could have probably certainly got top 5, the discipline that I was doing. That finished, and then I had kids. Well, not me physically, but yeah. Yeah, so I had children. And then throughout that process, Gladiators had finished, and somebody randomly contacted me from South Africa. And for the life of me, I can't remember, it was another country as well. And they said, would you like to come over and do some work in South Africa? And at the time, I couldn't actually do it. And when you're in television, once you say no to something, you're done. They get the next you is coming up behind you. But I said, what I can do is I can organize you a team of people to go to South Africa and do the shows. So I did that. So I got together all the UK gladiators, a group of contestants from here, and organized the Great Britain team to go across and do South Africa. And I can't remember the other one, whichever country it was. And they did that. And then that kind of brought my time in TV to an end. Big Brother started. Remember Big Brother? Is that still a thing?
I know of it. I know approximately what it sort of is.
Basically, a load of people live in a house, you're filmed, they all fall out, and you're just living in a tiny space until the winner's announced. Anyway, it was reality TV. It was the first reality TV show. And that finished everything that was like a physical game show. Everybody then wanted reality shows. So Gladiators, anything like that, all stopped, and TV became different. And obviously it's come back now. And in this time round, I've had, obviously Joey got involved, and I trained him for it. I knew, and certainly knew he'd make the final, and under the right circumstances, he could win it. And I said to him, the person you'll come up against in the final will be somebody that's wiry, fast, likely has done martial arts or something like that, and you'll need a head start to win. And that's exactly what happened. He came up against the guy who, I've forgotten his name, but he was a lovely guy. And he was faster than Joey on the eliminator. And Joey had a 6-second head start, so I knew he could win it. And the thing that goes, the skill that Joey had, and actually all gymnasts have, Joey is a competitive athlete, and that was what got him through. That's what enabled him to win. That he was able to, he'd done all those years of being a gymnast, competing, training. He knows how to focus. He knows how to prepare himself mentally, which most gymnasts and elite sports people do. That's what that tiny advantage was against the other guy. In fact, he had a 6-second start, and mentally he was switched on. He knew what was coming. And I think, a lot of the contestants you see on Gladiators, their modern day, they've started their sports journey much later on in life, at the kind of health and fitness based kind of thing. So they're doing it much later in life, whereas obviously gymnastics starts much earlier. And gymnastics is the best foundation for any sport or activity you can do.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Obviously, you've mentioned quite a lot there. There's a lot of different things that you've done in your life. What's one thing that stands out like most to you? What's like the one thing that you've done that you're proudest of?
I think actually the work I do in the school I work at, because all the things that I've learned and the fun that I've had with it all, I pass on to other kids. And within the sports programs that we do, so we've got a business called Sports School, which we're now the biggest holiday childcare provider in Newcastle. And that's been going since 1993. So it's been going a long time. I think just passing on what I've learned, and within the coaching side of things, I do it at school level, and that consistently doing really well at that level. As I said before, we're British schools national champions, and we have been for decades. And I think it's giving it back in that sense. That's the things that's what really stands out. I mean, I've done lots of other, like the skydiving and TV, and that's been great fun. But I think the one thing that will stay with me is passing it all on to other kids, sport and gymnastics wise.
Nice. What is the biggest thing that you try and pass on then? Is it just the fun, the love of the sport, having fun with it?
It's got to be fun. They've got to enjoy it, and letting the children and the kids understand that it is the journey, that enjoy it now, enjoy what's in front of you, enjoy every session. And that when I'm coaching, and I don't know how I do it, but every time I go to coach, I'm looking forward to it. And it's random. It is really random. I never get sick of it. And I think, and the kids that work with me, they never really get sick of it. They're enjoying themselves. And I think it's got to be that. There's so many distractions out there now for other things to do, physical, non-physical, that they've got to have fun. They've got to have fun with their mates. They've got to enjoy their time with the coaches. It's just got to be great. And that's the underlying priority. And within Joey and I've got a gymnastics club as well called Sports Club Newcastle. And the foundation of what we do is it has to be fun. The results will come if you enjoy it.
Nice. And if you were to give advice to a young gymnast who's trying to reach that elite level, would it be the same?
Enjoy the journey and take your time. It can't all happen now. And if you're not winning, and if that's what drives you, if you're not winning, that will come, but that shouldn't be the be all and end all. It needs to be, you're there to enjoy yourselves. And if you put yourself under the pressure, I have to win, you'll fail. It's got to be little steps all the way. But I think coaches owe it to their gymnasts that they are put into environments, regardless of what level, where they do get success, where they do get recognition from winning something. So that might be putting them into a different competition where, okay, yeah, it's not a competition which is nationally recognized or is going to improve their rankings. It's a competition where they're going to go and get some success. And the program that I operate within schools, the children, 99% of the children that are in the teams with me, are homegrown. They're all from the school. Build them up to a level, and they compete. They win at national finals. And I'll get the odd child will come to our school, be training doing full time at a club, 25, 30 hours a week. And their coaches will say, "Oh, you can't compete for school. You can't do that." And I think that's a massive disjustice to the child. You can't miss a session to go and compete in the national finals, whereby they're experiencing, they'll definitely make a podium because we've done that for decades, but they're experiencing standing in front of an audience with a national anthem playing and a medal being put round their neck in a ceremony that's equivalent to other national competitions within the club environment that they may never, ever, ever experience. And my son who went through that, I made sure that he continued with both the school side and the national side of things. And I think they must see some success. To go through a whole career and never win something or get some kind of recognition, I think it's a shocker. What have you got to show for it? Nothing. Stories of how I spend my whole childhood in the gym. But children need to experience success and reward, especially in modern society. It's all society at the minute. It's all driven by short-term engagement and reward, and that needs to be passed on. Coaches owe it to their gymnasts to put them in environments where they are going to have success, rather than thinking, "Oh well, in 10 years' time, he could be the national squad, and he might go to the Commonwealth Games, or he might make the Olympic." Might's a big word. Give them the opportunity for success now. And like I say, the kids stand up in the British schools national finals, hear the national anthem played, everyone standing there in silence, and they go up, they get their medal. It's a team thing. It's just brilliant. And they need to experience that. There you go. I'll repeat myself.
No, you're good. Awesome. Sort of different sort of question. What keeps you or has kept you motivated over the years?
In what sense? In life or in sport, in business, in everything?
Anything.
Right. It's really simple. I'll not fail. That's we've got sports businesses. I've got involved retail company, property, all kinds of things. Sports, sports camps. The main thing is you will fail, but you've got to get up and you've got to keep going. You've got to keep pushing on. Can't give up. In every week I have something that's could be a major issue that within business, and you get knocked down. You just got to keep getting up. You got to keep pushing forwards, keep stepping forwards all the time. That comes from sport. You might miss your ginger on the high bar 10 times. You get up and do it on the 11th go. You might fall off the pommels 10 times. You get up and do it on the 15th go. That's what stays with you. That's what the benefits of sport are. That, you can't always be successful. You can't always do it, but there's a million different ways to do the same thing. And you've just got to keep going. When you get knocked down, get up, dust yourself off, keep going. That's probably the one thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on. It was certainly an interesting conversation. Learned some new stuff about you. That's good. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on to the Game of Gymnastics podcast.
And good luck with your podcast. I hope it becomes a thing. Social media. Everyone makes a fortune with it, apparently.
I'm doing my best. It's just consistency at the moment. But yeah, thank you.
Don't give up. Keep going.
Thank you for listening to the Game of Gymnastics podcast. Follow for more if you've enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.